So I've always said that one of the best things about World of Warcraft is the ability animations, right? It's the way when you hit something, it feels good. If you've ever played another MMO and you try to hit something, it feels hollow. I don't know what it is about it. It doesn't feel right. WoW's always had the best in terms of, the way when you lay an axe on something, you feel like when you shoot a fireball, it feels like you're shooting a fireball. So I think this stuff's important right here. We're getting a bunch of new class, spell, and ability, talent animations coming in 11.2, so I'd love to check this stuff out, see what it's all about. Let's see what Dalaran Gaming is going to show us here for all the new animations coming in 11.2.
Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal. Patch 11.2 is bringing with it a bunch of class changes and a ton of different revamps and refreshers, which is always exciting to see, because it's always an opportunity for them to add some brand new abilities and talents into the game, and even rework some of the existing ones as well, changing up the playstyle, changing up some of the different effects and spells and interactions in exciting new ways, but also adding in a bunch of new animations to a class to really give them that visual flair. And 11.2 PTR has been filled with a ton of new different animations, not for every single class and spec out there, but for definitely a handful of them, with some brand new awesome looking visuals or refined variations.
Visuals matter. They matter. They do. You don't play any other games, so how the fuck would you know? Well, I played a few other. I mean, I played New World for a little while, and like even though you don't play, you can like visually see when something looks right and when it doesn't. Like watching people play. What's it called? Elder Scrolls Online. Like, I'm not saying this is a bad game. It's just some of the stuff looks a little bit weird sometimes. Same with Final Fantasy. I don't know. It just doesn't look like things hit the same way they do in WoW. One of the big ones was like Ashes of Creation. Like watching them do abilities, it was always like a little bit off. It's weird. Is that game still going on? Did that game launch? That shit flop? I don't know. It's one thing that's going to matter to me, like when Riot finally drops their MMO or whatever, like are the animations going to look good? When you swing your axe at something, does it look like it's making legitimate contact? Does it look right when it hits it? Well, I guess we'll see.
Older visuals that are being
WoW to me has always been S tier.
For other classes to get new animations have been Death Knights, Priests, Druids, Rogues, and Monks, but likely we'll see even more class adjustments and new animations in the future. But for today's video, I did want to go over all of the different animations.
WoW does have fluidity,
spell abilities, talents, revamps of older animations, but also some of the new combat animations that a handful of specs have receiving so far, and just show off exactly what all of these things look like. As always, if you want to get more regular updates for the patch 11.2, be sure to follow the channel and subscribe, but otherwise, let's dive right in. The first spec we can take a look at, or I guess rather class, is the Death Knight. And Frost Death Knight is going through a pretty wild rework, not only through the talents, the playstyle, and some major gameplay changes, but also through a lot of different new visuals that Frost Death Knights will be able to utilize. And there's some really cool ideas here on the table.
It just comes out
Some of the newer talents will be things like Frost Reaper, where Obliterate has a chance to tether your soul to the souls of others, and Frost Strike severs those souls, causing immediate Shadow Frost damage.
Oh, I see what happened there.
The lines. Adding this like soul type of aspect, very Arthas-like from the Frostborn and whatnot, into the gameplay and how you can break it. And it's also visually easy to see that you're tethered to the targets. This is also where you know when you can Frost Strike to deal additional damage. Another new animation will be to
I always like that too, like when an ability has like a very like striking visual cue, rather than like your little ability marker lighting up on your talent bar, or it's the next thing that popped up on your single button rotation. It's really cool when you see something like this, like a legit, like it's a soul tether. You're like, oh, it's time to break that shit, and you do your slice. I think that's more immersive, obviously, in terms of gameplay, than just an ability lighting up on your action bar.
Another new animation will be to a talent called Frostbane, which replaces your Frost Strike into this combo ability. After using Glacial Advance, you have a chance upon striking, depending on the amount of targets, to transform Froststrike into Frostbane. That does this like combo animation, very similar to something a warrior would be able to do.
Nice little back swirl.
Damage to nearby targets. It's pretty cool how they're given Froststrike kind of like this updated animation model.
That's cool.
Another new talent that actually is maybe not that new, maybe it's very similar to that of Legion Frost Death Knight, but it's Howling Blades, where Rhyme empowered Howling Blasts unleash two icy blades that strike at the target. Something similar like this existed back in Legion as part of your artifact weapon traits, and it's a very, very slight animation. It'll change like just little two spikes flying out the target. But it is something new that Frost Death Knights will be able to utilize when it comes to animations. Outside of new animations, you also get some adjusted animations like the new Empower Rune weapon, which instead of being an ability that buffs the Death Knight, now it's more of a combat skill that strikes at the enemy target while also empowering your next few abilities.
What?
So it has slightly different animation to it because instead of buffing yourself, it is now a damaging ability that can be used from range as well. So now it has a slightly different animation. It's a little bit more aggressive.
Okay.
Frost Sight is another ability that you'll get to use pretty regularly as a Death Knight, so instead of having a long cooldown, it's something that you can actually spam pretty regularly. But it gave him new animation instead of this sweeping scythe. Now it replaces
like it's holding. Look at that. She's holding the scythe now. Did you see that? Instead of it coming across, they're actually holding it in their hand.
With the scythe of Argus and causes you to strike at the target either with your main hand or offhand if you're dual wielding,
pretty cool.
or with a single weapon if you are two-handed. Another animational change is to a Frost Strike, which actually will now apply towards your dual-wield weapon in particular. Like, it'll either do a double strike from the side and 2 strikes will appear from Frost Strike, or it'll use this like 2-part attack with main hand and offhand. Instead of just letting you deal a single strike, it'll now incorporate both your weapons as part of that new animation. Another one that's also very slight, very faint of an animation change, but also pretty nice is Frostrim's Fury, where the original would have the dragon fly through it and kind of stay on the screen and linger until it disappears. This one now flies by, flies upwards, and then disappears in a puff.
Oh shit, that's way cooler. Yeah, if you never played Frost DK, the dragon, usually your Syndragosa would just sit up here and then kind of disappear. It would just eventually fade away. It was weird. Now it does like a Dragonflight-esque animation where it just flies, takes a shot up and disappears. Look at this.
Upwards and then disappears in a puff.
That's really cool.
So it's actually kind of neat how it has this exit now instead of just a fade
Look how it
out
used to
effect,
sit
which
there,
I think
fade
looks
out,
a lot better. Outside of Frost, we also have a slight visual adjustment for Unholy with the ability of Unholy Pact. When you press Dark Transformation, you create a chain of unholy energy between you and your pet, and they're changing the damage to be from a fire chain to now a shadow chain, which I think is thematic a little bit better for Unholy, since they are a necromantic Death Knight using necromancy and shadow magic. So now having a shadow chain between you and your summon is a little bit, I think, more fitting than a fiery chain. Although I could see them add glyphs in the future for you to change the color of that chain to maybe be a little bit more blue, so you look a little more frosty, or red, so you can look more sunland. I think something like this would be really cool to see in the future. Another spec that's seen some noticeably new animations is the Shadow Priest through 2 new talents. The first one being a Void Volley, which is something that you can press after channeling a Void Torrent, which sends out a volley of energy at the target. Very similar to some of the different...
I mentioned this. This is like the Frost Orb that mages use, but voidy.
Talents we've seen before, like a Void
Literally just
Eruption,
copy-pasted
but it has a slightly different animation, primarily striking at your main target, but also it does cleave to things around you, and it's really cool just seeing this cascade of volleys happening all at once, as it just looks very powerful and pretty intense. Another talent that receives a new animation is Idol of Nazath. At 50 stacks, you strike the target with horrific visions, which cause them to take slight shadow damage, which now represents with this Nazathian eyeball. At 100 stacks, it deals massive damage to the target, grants you a boatload of resources, but the animation is
That's literally the animation from Horrific Visions. That's kind of cool.
Very similar. It's just yet another eyeball of Nazath, but this is something that you'll start noticing more and more as this voidy kind of eye watching the target. Another animation adjustment is to a new talent called Death's Torment, which technically is not new. Previously in Dragonflight, it was a part of their Shadow Priest tier set, but it allows essentially Shadow Ward Death to deal damage 2 additional times. So the animation now plays out as Shadow Ward Death attacking the target multiple times, and then also will strike yourself as well as your Hellborn multiple times, and that can be visually observed when you do pick up that talent.
Okay. That
Another class that is receiving a number of adjusted animations, not necessarily new, but just like slightly different, is the Druid. Specifically for a lot of the restoration type of abilities. You'll notice it evidently through the ability of rejuvenation.
They got butterflies now.
Streaks that float around the character. It's now a lot more of this like flourishing butterfly.
Oh, look how pretty that is. Oh, we got butterflies now. Okay, yeah. That's nice. It does look cooler. It's got more fidelity to it. Too. It looks more HD than these strictly like these ribbon lines.
It's like flourishing butterfly animation, and it has a very green concentrational effect around your hands specifically.
It's thematically fits more.
Prominent variation of this type of animation. However, they also have implemented that same green butterfly effect, especially around the hands, for certain other skills such as regrowth, which you can see as you're casting the spell.
Okay, but I mean, is it the old one used to have leaves though? I mean, like, is all the butterflies necessary?
The spell. There's also a slight green animation
very
around the same
butterfly
hands in wild growth ability, while the vines are the same.
Just scroll to the end, Sam.
Tranquility also has the same green sparkle hands going on while you're channeling the ability, and efflorescence does the same. Specifically, when you raise your hands up for a second, it just appears for a moment and then disappears. And
so they put butterflies everywhere.
Spamming the ability. I'm not really sure if that is meant to be an animation adjustment for all of those, or if that's just meant to be rejuvenation specifically. So this may change in the future, but for now in PTR, it does look like all of those skills do have this like butterfly green effect going on for all of those abilities. Then we have monks with a spec of Brewmaster getting a couple of new talents to empower.
It's just like the whole butterfly thing. Like, you know, you guys know, like when Malfurion had his badass moment where he like destroyed that entire little horde convoy. You guys remember when he rooted the guy into the ground? Like, it was a badass Malfurion moment. He hasn't had a lot of them lately, but that was a really cool one. I can't imagine him casting those spells and butterflies flying around him while he's doing it. That don't make sense to me. Okay, it's not that cool. But, yeah, sure, now you guys got butterflies, so there you go, Druids.
Oh, otherwise known as Dave in the monk community. You can now summon Dave with the talent Walk with the Ox, where damage and abilities have a chance to invoke Nyuzawa, causing him to charge at the target and then stomp, which has a slightly different animation of Nyuzawa not necessarily appearing, but rather looking like a projectile more than anything. Appearing for a second, flying to the target.
Oh, there he is.
Doing a stomp that creates this like AoE circle area onto the target, which is a very, very slight animation, although with how much Nyuzawa got buffed up for this update, you'll likely be noticing that he'll be appearing a lot more often throughout combat through various ways that you can either invoke him or summon him directly.
I agree, Jax.
And finally, we have the Rogue's Killing Spree ability, which has gone through a number of changes, one of those being a brand new animation. Without the Rogues being treated more of like this parity brigand, they've really started to invest a lot into talents that help emphasize their pistol shot and pistol specific abilities. First it was Crack Shot, now it's Killing Spree, which instead of teleporting the character all over the place, now you'll use your guns and then you'll start dual wielding them, firing those guns in all directions in a frontal cone in front of you.
I personally think Outlaw Rogue has some of the coolest animations in the game. I've never played Outlaw Rogue, but I just love the way they look when they're like the way they just pistol shot things and they're swooping around with their swords. I guess maybe it's the pirate fantasy that I like about it, but it's such a cool, like really cool pistol shot animations. It does.
Playing out a variety of different gun type of animations while you're shooting at your target. This animation does play out for quite a while with a fairly hefty cooldown. Previously, Killing Spree would attack any enemy around you, whether they were behind you or in front of you, and the animation would mimic that. But they've since narrowed the cone of Killing Spree to be most target.
It almost looks like the Reaper's special ability from Overwatch, you know, where he's like spinning around shooting his shotguns. It kind of looks like that
in front of you directly, so the actual animations can veer a little bit
play one your raid with
to the right, but for the most part they stay right in front of the character. But with that's going to be everything we've got so far regarding new animations in the patch 11.2 PTR, at least for the time being. As always, I want to thank all of you guys so much for watching and hope you guys did enjoy the video. If you did enjoy it or found it informative, go ahead and give this video a like. I would very much appreciate it. Also, join our Discord community, especially if you just want to keep up with any of the newest class changes for the patch 11.2. I love diving into some of the different conversations we have regarding some of the upcoming updates with the community. Also, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And as always, I'll see all of you guys in the next one.
Nice, yeah, nice overall video there covering all the animations. I think they're important, I do. I think the animations are important. They've always been important to me. I think it's one of the reasons why WoW has always thrived as an MMO. They have the best and most fluid animation, environmental effects, environmental interactions, NPC interactions. It's always been the best in WoW. So I like to always see these things when they change them. Nice video here from Dalaran.